7 o'clock, and we're going to call the meeting to order. This is the regular meeting of the Kaneland Board of Education. We would like to inform all board meeting attendees that this meeting is being live streamed and archived for access at any time by our community members on the internet within 24 to 48 hours of tonight's, at the conclusion of tonight's meeting. If you'd please join me for the pledge, and the flag is up there. It's changed a little bit. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And a roll call, please.
Mr. Gonzalez.
Here.
Mr. Kleisner.
Here.
Mr. Cook.
Here.
Dr. Lawler.
Here.
Mr. Mankiewicz.
Here.
Mr. McCauley.
Here.
Mrs. Simmons. Here.
With 7 members present, we do have a quorum. Okay, at this point, is there any item that the board would like to move from consent agenda to new business?
I would. I'd like to pull H6 approval of capital projects 24-25 to new business.
Okay. So then we will change it. H6 will be moved to J1. We're going to change that to the beginning of new business. And then J1 will be moved to J2. J2 will be moved to J3. J3 will be moved to J4. And I believe that is it. Yeah, so we will amend the agenda as presented. Can I get a motion to approve that?
So moved.
Second.
All right, roll call, please.
Mr. Kleisner.
Aye.
Mrs. Simmons.
Aye.
Mr. Cook.
Aye.
Mr. McCauley.
Aye.
Dr. Lawler.
Aye.
Mr. Gonzalez.
Aye.
Mr. Mankiewicz.
Aye.
All right. Motion carries 7-0. All right. At this time, it's time for the board and superintendent salutes. And I will turn it over to Dr. Layden.
Thank you, President Gonzalez. Tonight I do have two. Our first one, I would like to introduce our student ambassador for the 23-24 school year, Katie Fottenhauer. If you'd stand, please. Katie, stay standing for a second. Katie, you might recognize Katie because Katie is new in the position, but she's not new to the board. She works for but she's part of the crier and attends most of the board meetings. So Katie, out of our 7 candidates, which we were excited to have 7 candidates, Dr. Horn and I interviewed 7 candidates, and part of Katie's background being part of the crier and being at many board meetings, we felt it would be the smoothest transition for a new student because she's been at so many board meetings and is familiar with the board process and board meetings. In addition to attending the meetings, Katie also is on a student council, Educators Rising, so she's going to be a future teacher. So maybe in about 5 years, we'll have her back here at a board meeting approving her contract so she can come back and teach in Kaneland School District. She's also part of the Key Club, the National Honor Society, the Youth Student Advisory, and volunteered at the Town and Country Public Library in Albert. So without any further ado, I would like to introduce Katie Fottenhauer as our student. And it is summer, so Katie is welcome to come to the June and July meeting, but she will actually start her post as the student board representative at the August 14th board meeting. Welcome, Katie. Thanks for coming tonight.
Welcome.
Yep. And then second, I have an update from the Elburn Lions Club. As you know, we work with the Elburn Lions on several projects and topics throughout the year. I do have it's about a half a paragraph. I do want to read it to make sure I don't exclude anything as part of the process. But as you know, the Kaneland School District has partnered with the Elburn Lions for literacy program for years, but tonight we're saluting them for the expansion of the literacy program to service students in the Kaneland area. This year, the club partnered with the district to run a book drive in February that wrote for literacy, love for literacy, collected over 1,500 new books from the community. Also, the local Quilting Guild handmade 86 0-3 books. If you remember those books, those are the soft little spongy books that kids can't ruin too quickly. So 86 of those books that have been donated, and then also spring baskets around Easter to over 61 families and students that were in need. Over 500 books have been donated for students in the K-8, and the program is focused on students that may not have a library or books at home in which to access or read. So we targeted those students to make sure that they had additional books to read. Also want to thank our students and families for supporting this process, and also Dr. Mum, who works closely with the Lions Club, wanted our board to know, or any of our audience members or anybody watching at home, that if they would like any books, if they have any books they would like to donate, they're cleaning out, doing their spring cleaning, if they would like to donate those books, they can contact Dr. Mum at 10358@kaneland.org, which is her email address, or you can just contact me directly and I can put any of you or any of our community members in touch with Dr. Mum to receive those books and make sure they're appropriate for our libraries in our district. Those are the two salutes I had for tonight. Thank you.
Dr. Fuchs, do you have anything to add?
I do not, thank you.
All right. Well, so at this point, I'll move on to the consent agenda. Tonight's consent agenda contains the following action items. Approval of accounts payable and payroll, May 2023. Approval of minutes of May 8th, 2023, special meeting, regular meeting, and May 17th, 2023, special meeting. Approval of personnel. Approval of bid, maintenance vehicle. Approval of mobile classroom application. 6 has been moved, so it's not on there. The informational items are student suspension data report, special education workload plan, the FOIA, Freedom of Information Act report, and field trip notification. At this point, I will entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Mrs. Simmons.
Aye.
Mr. Cook.
Aye.
Mr. McCauley.
Aye.
Dr. Lawler.
Aye.
Mr. Gonzalez.
Aye.
Mr. Mankiewicz.
Aye.
Mr. Kleisner.
Aye.
Motion carries 7-0. Okay. So at this point, we're going to move to public comments. I do have a list here, so I will read the spiel. The board values public input to inform our decision-making and to provide information and insight into what is happening throughout the district. Board meetings are held to conduct the business of the Board of Education and are required by law to take place in public. However, they are not public forums. We use the public comment section as an opportunity to listen to our stakeholders. For that reason, the board does not enter into debate or respond to questions spontaneously or without proper investigation and deliberation. In most cases, concerns or questions requiring follow-up will be referred to the superintendent. If you choose to speak publicly, we ask that you do so at the microphone, state your name and village of residence or your association with us for the record, and limit your comments to 3 minutes or less so that all who wish to speak may have that opportunity. Public comment is a maximum of 30 minutes with a 20-minute total length of time for any one subject. You are encouraged to seek private appointment to discuss matters concerning individual students or staff members. While public education can be an emotional issue, and understandably so, the board strives to maintain a certain level of decorum at the meeting. Those who speak are expected to maintain a tone of courtesy and civility. The board, so at this time, I will call upon the first one signed up. And you all will have to forgive me for messing up your last names. I'll adjust, but I have Sarah Nosek. Thank you, ma'am.
My son, Evan Nosek, is going to also, if it's okay, give me his 3 minutes.
Sure.
Do I need to adjust this, or is it okay just to have it pointed at me? Squeeze and lift it. Thank you.
Thank you, Colin.
Well, hi, my name is Sarah Nosek, and I've been a Kaneland High School track parent for about a decade. All 4 of my children have been in the program. My youngest son, Evan Nosek, is currently a Kaneland track athlete. And just while I'm at it, I just wanted to point out that we have a few Kaneland track athletes right here in the back row and some Kaneland track parents as well. I'm here to speak about the proposal to postpone the track resurfacing from this summer until 2028. While I'm speaking, you may see me tremble some. That's partially because I am stepping out of my comfort zone to speak in front of a group of people, and partially because I care very deeply about this issue. Thank you to board member Erin McCauley, who took the time to tour our track. I toured it again yesterday, and as always, I was dumbfounded at the poor state it is in. I took a lot of pictures, which I can share with you, but I encourage you to tour the track facility yourself because pictures can't do it justice. You need to see it with your own eyes. You can drive by the track from 50 meters away and see that it's still black and has faded white lines and numbers on it and think, oh yeah, it must be okay. But that could not be farther from the truth. There is not a single track facility in Illinois that has gone as long as Kaneland without a minimum of resurfacing the track. A track is supposed to be resurfaced every 7 to 10 years. Our track has not been resurfaced for 26 years. The Kaneland School District and Board of Education have collectively left this track to corrode and deteriorate to an extremely unsafe point. Unbelievably, the district has now recommended that we put off doing the very minimum for our track, which is just resurfacing it, for another 5 years. That would put us at 31 years. Again, it's supposed to be resurfaced every 7 to 10 years. As a track parent, I personally witnessed the district promise to resurface the track 4 times ever since my oldest son was at Kaneland. Then go back on their word each and every time, postponing again and again, kicking the can down the road repeatedly. The district had a plan again to resurface the track this summer and now has turned its back on it, wanting to delay it another half decade. This proposal is presented to the board, and your decision tonight boils down to the safety of PE students who use the facility during the day and athletes from Kaneland who train on it and all other visiting school athletes who compete on it. You as a school board are one catastrophic injury or catastrophic runway or hurdle injury away from a lawsuit at best. We are not practicing good stewardship of safety for our student athletes on a surface that is nearly 2 decades past its time. It is not safe for children or for adults to use. You may not think about it as often as we do, but that is the worry that Kaneland track athletes, coaches, and parents live with every day. Others see it too, including the teams in our area. The IHSA sees it. We can't even hold the conference or sectional meet at our track because of its condition. The state won't permit it, and other teams don't want to come here. It is downright unsettling because our students and athletes are on the track every day. In the June board meeting of 2022, it is clear from the minutes that the district intended to resurface the track. That was regardless of the fact that the whole track might be leveled and moved once a referendum was passed. This was done specifically because everyone knew that it would be years before referendum money became available, and the track surface couldn't wait that long. Bonds were sold from the interest fund and moved to the capital projects fund specifically for the track resurfacing. Therefore, the money for the resurfacing should be sitting in the capital projects fund, waiting to be spent on our track. We were told that the track resurfacing has been contingent on the referendum passing, but that's not true. The only thing that was contingent on the referendum was rebuilding the whole track. And by the way, how does the district expect to pass a referendum without clear transparency to the taxpayers? What happened in the last few months that changed last year's plan to resurface the track. Was this job ever put out for a bid? And if it was, what happened to the responses from those companies that answered? Does no one want to resurface the track? And if so, why not? In recent years, we have watched while other schools in our area have either replaced or resurfaced their tracks. We are researching how these schools, especially the smaller ones like Kaneland, were able to provide adequate facilities for their students. How are we the only district in the area that does not plan for and provide a safe track facility for their students and athletes?
Ms. Nosek, we're going to ask you to wrap it up.
Okay. This board's membership, I'm almost done. So this board's membership did not create this problem, but you are now charged with fixing it. You have the power to initiate positive change at a critical time. You have the power to address this and demand that the money is put into the project that the community is footing the bill for. There needs to be transparency about how the money is spent and withheld, and what the rationale is as to why other projects are taking a 5-year priority over this one glaring need. You also have the power to tell the administration to go find a way to make this work. We as the parents and taxpayers will work with you to hold Kaneland accountable to providing a safe track facility. This is a problem to solve, not in another 5 years, but now. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Next up, we have Jen Farmer.
So Jen Farmer, I'm from Sugar Grove. I have a graduated senior and a 7th grader. My senior was on the track team. He finished 8th in state in pole vault. And the pictures that I had just sent you were pictures of the pole vault runway. I did not know how bad of a shape that runway was until I actually walked it. And I have been at Kaneland for 3 years watching him pole vault, and just sitting a mere 25 feet away, I could not tell the extent of damage to the runway until I actually got down there and walked it. And I hope that you can take the time, 10 minutes, to walk the track, walk the runways, walk the long jump pits. There are cracks that are so huge. I am surprised, floored, that watching these meets, watching these kids practice, there was not a catastrophic injury, just like Ms. Nosek said. The safety of these athletes, not only just our athletes, but like Ms. Nosek said, the visiting athletes coming in as well, our PE students, they have to take top priority. We have to find a way. We will work with you, the parents, the community. We all have to come together and find a solution to make this work. Because again, if we're thinking about our kids' safety and we're saying safety 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, not just when they are in a school building from 7 to 3. We have to think about their safety, not only inside of a building, but outside on athletic fields as well.
Thank you. Okay, well, at this point, Kendra Schumacher.
Good evening. Kendra Shoemaker. I am the KEA president, 4th grade teacher, community member, and Kaneland graduate. I noticed that one of the agenda items tonight is the presentation about the ESSER spending plan. I know admin met with different stakeholder groups to gather input on ways the money should be spent. There were a couple questions I had as I read through the spending plan. It may already be answered in the upcoming presentation, but since there's no question answer session, I thought I'd use this time to ask the questions. Under the proposed expenditures, 80% of allocation, there is an item that states purchase of technology, networking equipment, and devices for students to use remotely in the amount of $101,285. There is another item that states the same thing, purchase of technology, networking equipment, and devices for students to use remotely in the amount of $175,866 under the next section, which is proposed expenditures, 20% of allocation addressing learning loss. My questions are, what does devices for students to use remotely mean? Is that remote learning? Also, why is the same item under two different sections with two different amounts? Any clarification would be appreciated. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am, for your comments. Okay, we have some time left. Does anyone else anyone who signed up, would anyone else like to speak?
Hello, I'm Janine Mayer from Elburn, and I had a couple more comments. I was here last month, and some concerns. One thing I was happy to hear, and I wanted to find out where we're at on this, is the meetings that you were discussing possibly with the community. You were saying that you were going to have some town hall meetings you were hoping, so community can be talking and you can have a discourse back and forth. Wanted to find out where you're at on that. Last time I was here, I was talking about the 30% only of the Kaneland graduates can read at grade level. Yet, $17,000 is the average cost per student in the state of Illinois, but it's about $24,000 or $25,000 at Kaneland. Yet, with only a 30% reading level at graduation. And there seems to be not much accountability for this. The teachers all get 100% rating, even though they're suffering, the children. And as we know, the main thing is this track is very important. But if you're spending more per student than anywhere in this area, quite a bit more than Burlington, and Burlington's like at a 66% reading rate, and kids can't read. That's the bottom line. That's success in life, is reading, math, science. So if they aren't even at a third are graduating reading at grade level, this is just astronomically terrible. I just think that this is the number one thing that should be, of course, addressed. So I want to find out where you're at in the standard-based grading, which I understand a lot of students don't care for. Teachers don't understand. They were not trained correctly in it. So I want to find out how we're going to get success back here for the children of Kaneland.
Thank you. Okay, anyone else wish to address the board? Oh.
I'm Anthony Urban. I'm a track athlete and I just graduated here about a week ago. And as a track and field athlete for the school, I think I could speak for all the athletes on the team that we have the worst track we've ever ran on, and that people from other schools say that too, and they don't even want to come to our school for track meets. We've had the most success as a program for the past 25 years and still have nothing to show for it. We have won 6 conference titles in a row, a sectional title this year, and had all 4 state athletes this year. The program could be even more successful if we were given better opportunities to improve. And the program has been this successful while practicing in the hallways in a track that is basically concrete. I know on some parts of the track there's literally concrete showing, especially in, I think, at the 100-meter start, it's just concrete. So I don't know who looked at it, but you might need to get your vision checked out. And a new track would decrease injuries and increase kids in the program. I know kids who have left the program because injuries to their legs due to running on such a hard surface. And other schools have complained about coming to our school for a meet because of how bad the track condition is. It is also one of the oldest tracks in Illinois, pushing 30 years old. And tracks are supposed to be redone every 8 to 15 years, which is being generous, I guess, since he said 7 to 10. And we are almost double that. The program will continue to succeed no matter what circumstances we are given, because we always have, but I think it's time for something new.
Good evening, everyone. Carl Moose, Montgomery, Illinois. I'd also like to note that I am a licensed football official in the state of Illinois. So I have a lot of conversations with other officials as I officiate games. And when I tell other officials that my son goes to Kaneland, they always talk about the facilities, and in particular the track. And I actually had the opportunity, because I did ref a Kaneland game, freshman game this fall. I was actually able to tour, to walk around the facilities as I was checking the football field. And I can attest to what others have said about the poor condition of the field. And on a personal note, I would like to state that I went to West High School in the early 90s, and they had a poor track. My track career, I believe, was cut short because of running on that track. I suffered foot and shin injuries because of that, and my track career was cut short. My son went to state this year. I still believe that I'm faster than him, so if I could go back in the time machine and we could race, I still think I would beat him, even with my bad feet. I sent all of you a 1.5-page letter last evening. I don't know if you've had some time to review it. Again, just reinforcing the safety aspect, I think, is the most important, not just for our athletes, but as everyone said, when we have the Peterson invite, right, and we bring all the schools in, we want to show our best. The last thing that we would want is for for any athlete, male, female, whomever, to have their career cut short by a poorly maintained track. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Okay, last opportunity. Anyone else? Okay, we will move on. The first item of new business is the item that was moved from consent agenda. So we will be discussing the approval of the capital projects for 2024, 2025.
And typically what we would do if an item, or what we do is when an item is moved from consent to new business, that means there's somebody on the board that would like to discuss it more. So usually we allow this time right now to give an update. Any questions from Mr. McCauley as you hold that, just to what questions you're looking for, what clarification, so that we can make sure we address that.
First thing is I'm looking at, again, I just want to reiterate, I was one of the members that had gone, met with the track coach. I ran track in high school, and I walked the surface. And I even called the local track service guy to see, what would be done with the amount that was allocated for the track. I'm aware that it was roughly around 29,000. I know it's typically 3 to 5 to do the cracks and whatnot. And he basically stated that it was basically putting makeup on the track. And I did see the cracks. I literally walked the coach all the way around. Now I did long jump, triple jump. I did 200. So I know the path, even where the pole vaulters went, it's unbelievable. So I decided to pull this because I'm very grateful that all the people that had sent an email and their concern, and I know safety is definitely number one. And I came here because I got 3 boys now. I got a freshman, 2 kids in grade school, and I hope that my 2 youngest will be able to do track or do a sport, to be able to have a facility that they're gonna not have to be concerned about any injuries. And I'm kind of shocked. Again, I just came here and I'm shocked that it's been that long. Now, I ran at St. Charles East. We had a new track put in, and what a difference original track looked like, what the one today looks like. I know about shin splints. So what I wanted to discuss, if a possibility with the board where they stand, is I see that we're going to seal coat new pavement for $500,000. I wanted to see, I had spoken to you, was there a bid specifically on the resurfacing, or was there just, we focused more on the referendum kind of paying for the resurfacing? I guess what I'm asking is, I just wanted to see like what exactly it would cost to do the track, do the seven lanes, not do the bleachers, not do the fence, the lighting, anything like that. But I just wanted to discuss what actual bids were placed if they were to take the track all the way down to the bare bones.
Okay, thank you. Wanted to see, before Dr. Fuchs or Mr. Payton answer any questions, were there any other board-related questions on this topic that we just make sure we throw out there so that Dr. Fuchs and Mr. Payton can address them accordingly?
I do. Biggest concern is safety, and so none of us on the board are experts when it comes to this track, and we're hearing the parents, they're the kids that are out there. Who is the expert of saying that the track is safe? Is it IHSA? Who comes in and looks at this track every year before track season starts? Who's giving the approval? Who's our checks and balance when it comes to saying we can wait another 5 years? Or, we've been bumping this for a while. Like every time we had to bump it, who said it was okay, that it was safe enough? Again, none of us are experts in the room on that. So just curious of who's giving that approval when is it track officials? Is it IHSA? Is it us? I mean, is it Mr. Rollman? So who's the expert? Track, how often is it inspected? Again, who's the expert saying that it's safe? Do we have a report of how many kids have been injured? Is that playing a factor? Again, parents are saying that there's potential injuries. Have there been injuries? Again, my biggest thing is focusing on the safety part of it. Other schools, some of the students have said other schools don't want to be here, but have we had other schools literally pull out of track meets because they have safety concerns? Is there anybody else besides our own parents and kids? Is there other school districts saying, no, we can't come here because, and are we losing track meets? Are we doing track meets, or is this only practice? Again, and why are what's the reasoning behind all of that?
I had something as well. So last year we approved 600,000 for 2013 to be applied to the track, and 2023. If I went back and looked.
Dr. Fuchs, did you want to clarify the date?
Is that not true?
That's not true.
Okay, so the capital improvements plan last year we had. I don't have it in front of me, but
If you look back at the memo,
mhm.
it was pulled. The request, the administration changed last year in June from a reconstruction to a recoding of the surface.
At what cost? Do you remember?
From the 600,000 down to the 29,000.
Down to what it is now. Okay.
That was done last year
Okay.
at the time of approval.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
We didn't reduce it down to 29,000. We still intended to resurface the track. That was the intention. And that's the bid spec that was put on the street. No track vendors replied to that bid spec. The only reply we got was for 29,000 for some repairs versus a resurfacing. We did not have any vendors that submitted a bid for a full resurface.
So did we make that change in light of the impending referendum and all the changes that were going to happen with the master facility plan?
That also in light of the budget, of what else needed to be done. If you remember last year is when the auditorium lighting came in double what we anticipated.
Right.
And we were already down the path on that.
Okay.
So that plus, we knew that the referendum was coming. We also know that the 600,000 that it could possibly take, if we do that work and then the referendum would have passed, we would have wasted all of that money. So we were careful to try to figure out. We've talked about the track multiple times at the board level because of the quandary of, we know that you can't run a sectional meet because there's not enough lanes. We know that that outside lane is not used. And so our goal was to expand it, make it bigger and better, but the referendum didn't pass. So now is the time, we had to do something So that's when we put the bid out. We approved the bid in January for this summer's work. So we know that this summer, we're doing more repairs than we've done in the past. We believe those repairs should last another 2 to 3 years, not 5 by any means, but 2 to 3. We also know additional repairs will most likely need to be made next year because of the condition of the track. The question is, how much money do you want to put into the track now versus do you want to just redo it? Do you want to expand it and make it what we want? Or do you want to wait for the referendum and let it pass with a full track replacement? Those are kind of our choices.
Do you mind if I ask something about the bids?
Sure.
I just wanted to ask, you said you guys put bids out, nobody replied except for this 29,000. Do you,
Correct.
is that typical or is there a reason? Did they say, look at the track and go, it's not a resurfacing job, it's a,
The one
It's a
bidder who
rebuild-
did
a rebuild.
reply Said, yeah, I would not resurface this. I would not want to put my company's name on it.
okay,
I will do some repairs and then, so what he didn't submit a bid for what we asked for. He submitted an alternate bid, and in the absence of any other bids, we accepted that because we felt it was, certainly better than doing nothing.
okay.
As we've heard, it's not in good shape. We all know that.
So companies, organizations that are, this is their job. They're saying that it's not even a resurfacing, it needs to be rebuilt. So they don't want to put their name on it by doing that. Okay,
That is correct.
Thank you.
And that's just what I was told verbally. And
right. No, I appreciate that. Sorry.
What's the cost to resurface the track? I mean,
Replace it.
or I guess replace it, whatever needs to be done, yeah.
We think it's about 600,000. Because we didn't get any bids on that, we don't know for sure. That's an architect's estimate.
So we
Dr.
went,
Fuchs, maybe for everybody who's playing along, can you tell us what we budget usually for capital projects total?
Totally, on an annual basis, about $1 million. For the last 2 years, we've done a little over 2 million. The first year that we did a little over 2 million, the board agreed that we just had to do some projects because we have so many needs. And with that, they said we could go $1 million deficit or overspend to try to bring down that fund balance a little bit. The second year, the 2 million included the use of the working cash bonds from when we cleaned out the debt service fund. And so this year, on tonight's agenda, I've got 1.4 million planned. It's a little over $1 million. It's pushing the envelope. But on the other hand, we have so many needs.
Right.
We simply have so many capital needs.
So my question then for you is, because I'm looking at seal coating, $500,000 with some replacements, not just seal coating. Students come here and they don't go, wow, this is an incredible parking lot. They go here and go, I don't want to compete here. I don't want to have anything to do with this. If it's approved or however, again, I'm new, I don't know how it goes, but we say, hey, can we put the seal coating on hold, put that towards the track?
So
Is that a possibility?
the part of the seal coating, you're probably right, it could be put on hold. But we have another serious situation, and it's the bus parking lot. I'm gonna let Mr. Payton talk about why that can't be put on hold. Or why it shouldn't be put on hold.
I mean, it's a similar situation. It's a safety issue for our bus drivers. In the wintertime, the parking lot is sinking, especially under the wheels of the bus, because where all the weight is, obviously. So that just fills up with ice in the wintertime. And it's just a challenge, and we have bus drivers every year slip and fall, and because they have to, there's certain responsibilities that a bus driver has. They don't just get on the bus and go. They have to do walk-arounds, they have to check fluids, things like that, and it's become significant issue in the bus lot. So that's a high number if we were just doing seal coating, but it's addressing things like that and some major resurfacing in some other lots as well.
And we do provide the bus drivers with, spikes on their, shoes. So, for that.
So then I look at it, and the track's been doing 3 to 5,000 is crack repairs. Now I know going to the baseball fields, watching my oldest boy play baseball. I mean I see holes like this, but then I go and look at it. Well, can we do Band-Aid fixes just like to the track? Reallocate the funds. I mean the track's been going through it for a long time. I mean it's asphalt, built with rocks, gravel. Do a temporary fix. And go from there. I mean, what can you do besides having to do this mass?
Unfortunately, there's just so many buses, so you have big sinking patches at every tire, you know. So that all fills up with water in the wintertime. I mean, yeah, we could throw cold patch in there, and then first time they come along with a plow, they're just pulling it all out, and we're back to where we started. It's almost a waste of money to even do that. Once they start plowing, they'll just rip the patches right out.
So I'm just going back. I mean, we're talking vehicles and we're talking students. And I'm going to fight for the students. I want them to have what they have. I understand vehicles. But I just look at the overall. Again, I'm new. It's my opinion. I'm here for you guys. And I mean, they've got the short end of the stick, and now we're concerned about vehicles in a parking lot. People are still going to come and go. It's still going to happen. I mean, I would love to. I don't know how, if you put it for a vote, if you guys, where everybody else stands, but I'm just letting you know, I would like to put that fund, if possible, towards the track, see if there can be a bid put on it, on the actual resurface, complete redone of the track, and go from there.
So you would be referring to a complete reconstruction?
It has to be complete, yeah, like you said,
and,
$500,000.
And just so we're fully transparent, if we do that, it's still gonna be a 7-lane track, 6 usable lanes. We can do that, I just want everybody to understand that, so folks aren't upset, you know, a year from now if we do that work, and then.
And I'm just looking at too, because I know there was such hope in that referendum. And again, there's hope, and then there's having funds, and there's projects, and again, it's just moving the pieces around. And that's what we have to look at. It's what we have to work with. You can't put hope in a referendum. I mean, there's no point in putting any money in it, period, if you know, we're just gonna keep repatching. It needs to be done. Things have to be sacrificed. Again, there's needs and there's wants. Track is a need, parking lot's a want. I mean, there's a need to a point, but
if there's 6 usable lanes, we still cannot host sectionals or conference, I believe. You still need 8 lanes. So this replacing the 6 lanes, it's a better Band-Aid, but it's still, you can't do what you want with those 6 lanes. You still need.
And I just want to mention, I can assure you, we are also here for the students.
Sure.
But when we talk about the bus parking lot, we're not talking about the vehicles, we're talking about our bus drivers. So those are people too. And so we want to make sure that we look at all sides evenly and fairly. I agree with you. The track is in desperate need. I don't disagree. We are on the same side.
Okay.
We need to figure out how to get it done. But then the next question is, as the board, is we need to figure out if we're going to spend $600,000 on this track, how best are we going to explain that to the taxpayer when we turn around and ask for money for a new track? Well, what about the $600 you just spent? So then that begs the question, is the board going to want to run a referendum again? If so, do they still want the stadium, or is that something that we're going to live with the 6 lanes and pull it off of the referendum? There's a lot more questions than answers that we need to explore and make sure we know where we're going before we just move forward with $600,000 expenditure.
So, Dr. Fuchs, can I ask, delaying this agenda item till after our retreat, what would that do to our schedule?
Sure, we've moved that schedule back intentionally,
Right.
which is a good thing.
Yeah.
Their retreat will be in July. There's one board meeting at the end. When you ask that question, would we be able to vote on it in July, or do we anticipate continued delay? Because the sooner we can get the drawings, the architect, everybody engaged,
Yeah.
the better the bids
Yeah,
through the
so
process.
my question was, it was based on your comment, actually, this idea of, you know, where do you want the board to go? Well, we have a pretty brand new board. I don't know if we have that answer yet, and we won't have that answer until we've talked. We're not gonna be able to talk until the retreat, right? So I think we're doing cart before the horse, right? If we have folks who are more passionate about different capital projects or think that maybe we need to take a different direction in our district, we haven't had that conversation yet. And I think, but this is telling us that maybe we need to start thinking about other stuff, right? Not to say that this would change anything, so I'm not making promises, but the idea here is I think this retreat is probably vital to understanding where
Yeah.
we're gonna head.
Part,
Yeah.
part of the retreat, though, just for clarification, that's for board self-evaluation. So we can talk about self-evaluation, talk about goals, communication, those things. But topics like a capital expenditure is an open session topic. So that is for this, that's for this venue right now, this time to have that discussion.
Yeah, I guess so. And correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm thinking even small, or not small, but even like an individual agenda items kind of go back to that whatever the vision becomes, right? And so if that vision isn't established yet, I'm not sure we can address these yet. I mean, we could take a vote and we could see what happens, but I don't know if that's really a great process.
From my opinion, most of the items on that capital projects list, we need to act on sooner rather than later.
Sure.
To allow for the engineering work and stuff. The electrical is a concern. Getting components is a problem. And getting engineering done and getting the bid out on the street is super important. Whether we do parking lot or track, I don't know if that piece of it can be postponed until we have further discussion on it, but approve the other items in there. That I don't think would be as big of an issue with the bid timing.
Okay.
And stuff like that.
And I think the other question too is the timing. What exactly would the board be looking for information if we pull an item typically, or if we move an item back? Typically, is either more information is needed, more feedback is needed, maybe a second bid is needed. There's usually a reason to move it back rather than just additional discussion that's needed.
Mr. Kleiser?
Yeah, I just wanted to also point out too, we're voting on something that's actually going to be done the following summer, 24-25, right? So this isn't something we're voting today and it's going to be done over the summer either. So I just want us to all be kind of clear on that as well. I think the other part of it too is we don't actually have a real bid on this. We're just throwing around a number called $600,000 based on architect, right?
It's an estimate.
It's an estimate, yeah.
That's all we've got at this point.
Exactly.
Because we can't get bids till we have an approved plan and things like that.
Right.
Yeah, process.
Our processes are pretty complicated.
Yeah.
So our two options right now,
It's still state laws and those all, yeah.
our two options right now are essentially, in terms of the track, focusing on the track, are this $30,000 Band-Aid, which, or.
That's a done deal.
Okay.
That's getting done this
That's
summer.
So
We already
we've
voted.
approved
proceed.
it, we've approved the bid, the work is scheduled.
So proceeding as is recommended with that, or this potential $600,000 estimate, right? I mean, there's no in between. There's no.
The 600,000 can't be done this summer.
No, I understand, but in terms of
24.
getting the track, so getting the track fixed,
Yes.
our two options are proceeding as has been presented, which has already been approved with the quote unquote, forgive me, but Band-Aid fixed, or looking into resurfacing at an estimate of 600,000 for next year. Those are essentially our two options.
The first really isn't an option.
Or
It's happening.
Yeah.
no, I know, but I'm if we approve it as such, or if we
But we're not approving that tonight.
okay.
That's done. The board has approved it. The work is scheduled.
For
The
this
bid
summer.
The bid has been approved. We're only talking tonight about summer 24.
So we would fix it now and then also do that
That's
So we're
correct.
talking about additional expenditures,
We've
not
already got a
or,
signed
it's
contract.
and.
Yes,
Can't really go-
yes. We're not doing anything with this summer. This summer, it's now. Yeah.
You mentioned, so we're gonna do the 22, we're gonna do this summer, but you mentioned a little bit ago, that there would probably still need to be a second repair. Is that, because that's not on the 2024, 2025.
No, because it's not probably gonna cost that much.
Okay. Can you share what this repair is now and then what that repair would be? And like, in the sense to parents and for us to understand of, what is that giving us in length of and safety? Again, my thing is all about safety, so.
It's significant patching of
Okay.
the existing track is what it is.
And so do they say?
And also, I
Sorry, go
apologize,
ahead.
restriping.
Yeah. So when you say, patching, what does that mean? Like lifelong, or like how many years? Is it a
2 to 3.
2 to 3 years? Okay.
But that doesn't mean that we won't have to do additional patching, because we've been doing 3,000 to 5,000 a year for years.
Okay.
So, in a year, we're probably gonna have to do some more patching.
Okay.
The schedule, when we say the track is gonna get redone in 2028, is that the $2 million expenditure we see in the improvement plan, the priority list, or is that a $600,000 replacement?
600,000 in 2027.
Okay.
And is that 7 lanes or 8 lanes? Just,
Seven.
oh, it's gonna be the full 7 then? Okay.
But they won't still be able to use the outside.
That's right, okay.
So it's 6.
I didn't know if the bleachers were gonna move.
That's the $2 million.
That's the 2.
Yeah, that's the 2 million.
That's
Because then you have to move the fence, the lights,
Bleachers.
and the bleachers. Yeah.
So is there an option then to, so let's say, obviously there's a need for a new track, and let's say it happens, we push forward with it, we spend the 600,000 for the new track. Is there an option to then amend the capital improvements program or plan, plan to not include that portion, and then we just stay at this number of lanes, whether it's 6 or 7 going forward, and are not eligible? I mean, is it possible?
Can you repeat that for me? I want to make sure I understand.
I guess I would hate to put $600,000 into a project that then we go to referendum and we have referendum money to change it. Can if we put the 600,000 into a new track or resurfacing, whatever the term is, then can it be considered when it comes time for a referendum and the capital improvements plan, we remove that portion of the plan so as not to spend the 600,000, waste it, and then have this new money? I don't want to put 600,000 into this thing and then referendum gets approved and then we're just building a new track elsewhere with the max lanes.
So you have up until the time we accept the bid for the track in which to not do it. Generally, that bid would be, this year we did it in, I think, March. We did the paving.
I believe so, yeah.
Yeah, in March. The earliest a referendum could be on the ballot again would be April. So I think you're going to have a timing issue of what you're asking. Because once you accept that bid, you basically have a contract with a vendor and they're expecting that work. And that would be spring. You could maybe wait till after the April election if that's something that we would decide to do to approve that bid. We could time it such, and then you wouldn't have to do the track if the referendum passed in April.
So the
For that.
timing of that's one of my
Yeah.
questions too is, so if we do referendum in April, it gets passed, do the bidding and stuff like that, but then also then the rebuilding of everything we're talking about. So like, what does that timeline look like? Is that 2 years from now, 3, like if ultimately if we were to go for the referendum and we get the 8-lane track, we do the fence, we do everything that we need to do, what is that timeline?
Dr. Fuchs, can I interject just one
Yeah,
thing?
absolutely.
I just want to clarify, it's a small detail, but just clarify that the election next spring is March. So
Oh.
Sorry.
it's a month difference, so it's not a huge difference. And then the other piece too is, I'm going to share more information with the board on the referendum findings. And then our goal is in September to have more of that conversation. So this board will then learn more about the referendum, learn more about the process, learn more about the projects, and then this board will have the same discussion that the previous board had as far as which referendum items will be in there, what will be the cost, what will be the expenditures, and then whether it's March of 24, which is the consolidated election, or November of 24, which is the presidential election. Those would be the next 2 possible times where the board would consider possible election going back out for another referendum.
Do you happen to remember the date of that election? Because we only have one board meeting in March. How those line up?
I don't remember the
Can't
exact date.
remember. Okay, because I thought it was April, but it's March. Okay.
Well, I think that begs another question. If we're making decisions tonight and in even the next couple of months, I don't know if we can make them contingent on a possible referendum or not. We haven't even decided if we're going to go to referendum. You know what I mean? Like,
Right.
So again, I think we're doing cart before the horse.
Well, the reason I'm trying to play the timeline game is
No,
to figure out, because if referendum, be it March, be it November, whatever, so that's 2024. I'm just trying to figure out by the time we go through the process and we get it, and whatever we choose, whatever. I mean, because that might also drive what number we choose to for referendum, in the list. And we can say, oh, by the time it's all done, the track and all that stuff would be starting in 2025, or is it 2026?
Yeah, let me answer that question because I can get you a little closer
Okay.
to that answer. So say for example, the referendum passes in March of 24. We're able to pull back and not do the replacement. From the time the referendum passes, based on what we knew this time, it's approximately 2 years.
Okay.
So that would give you spring of 24, which we would do the minor repairs for summer. And then summer of 25. And then by spring of 26, the new track stadium, based on the plan that we just failed, could be ready. So it's approximately 1.5 to 2 years.
18 months is what
Yes.
Dan quoted a number of times throughout the process.
So the reason
that should work for a spring track season.
So the reason I'm asking that, so
Yeah.
the rest of the board knows, because we're talking about 2024, 2025. If we were to put a $600,000, part on the budget, we're asking for 1 more year. So we're spending $600,000 in potential. And again, I understand referendum is an iffy. I'm not, totally understand that part. But we're spending $600,000 for something that's going to get tore up and replaced, right? Am I understanding that?
Yes.
Okay, so it's going to be completely. So again, it's a $600,000. That's why I'm like, if it was 2027, 2028, that we're like, hey, so we're not necessarily. I know everybody. We're looking at the budget and we're saying 2028 or 2027 for the 600,000, but we're really not if the referendum happens. So my thing is that was the timeline game going. We're going to put $600,000 to something that's going to be there for 1 year, right? If I've got that right.
I mean, these are the decisions. These are the exact conversations we were having 3 years ago.
Right.
2 years ago.
Yes, we did.
The exact same conversations, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and if we if we prove this and we move forward with the $600,000 for the resurfacing, that might change the trajectory of what we put into the referendum anyway. We don't actually know that. We might say, forget it. We're not going to push out we're not going to make it an 8-line track. We've already spent the money. We're not going to move the field over however many yards we're planning. Maybe we shave that down anyway.
Yeah.
Again, we still have feedback that we need to listen to. One other question I do have. Obviously, in the interim, the track is as bad as it appears, and with some patching and everything. Do we have any kind of alternatives at this time? What is the track like here at Harder? What could we do in the meantime to put our athletes onto some better surfaces? Obviously, Harder's not or the high school's not too far away from here. But I'm just trying to let's think outside the box a little bit too, from a safety perspective. What can we do in the meantime? Because either way we slice it, all right, if we're only going to be able to do some patchwork for the time being anyway, and if this does change and we do approve this and it does a full resurfacing of the 6, 7 lanes or whatever, that's not going to be for a couple of years out. What can we do to ensure some safety now? How's the track here? Is this something that is obviously newer, right? Is it a little bit safer place for the team to start running on? Would it be more cost effective to just bust the team over when, for practices or for meets or whatever? Can we host something here in the middle school if we want to do something a little bit bigger? That would be a little bit more attractive for some of the other schools to come to. And I just want to think outside of that box too, as something that maybe could be a solution in the next couple of years in the interim anyway, so we can kind of get past something through patchwork.
Mark, are you familiar enough with the track here to comment on that?
I would say I would probably defer to David Rollman, the athletic director, but this is built for middle school kids, not high school kids. It does not have the level of performance that you're going to get at a high school. You don't have, at the high school, I think we have 3 shot put rings. Here you have 1. There's 1 discus ring here. So that wouldn't be an issue. Pole vault, you can run it either direction at the high school, depending on wind. Here, you've only got 1 direction. There's only 2 long jump, triple jump pits. At the high school, you have like 6, something like that. So you would be making some concessions to come here, and I'm not sure how Mr. Rollman would feel about that, how the coach, Mr. Drendel, would feel about that. But it is something we could ask.
The other issue that I would wonder about, in addition to those, is the middle school track program, I believe, runs concurrent with the high school track program
In the spring.
in the spring. So what would you do with their program?
Maybe he's just saying for summer practices, the middle school would be a safer option than the high school.
Sure,
You know.
sure, those are things that we would have to kind of put our heads together and think about.
So I asked earlier about safety, like the expert, who's approving the field, the track now, in the sense of, so we're going to do the 22,000 patch now this summer. Who is saying that, like, oh, that's good enough for another year or 2 years? Again, is it IHSA? Is it Mr. Rollman? Who is it?
Yeah, I would consider it to be a team of people. It's not one single person. The IHSA doesn't, unless if they're shutting us down, which they haven't. The vendor, when they do their work, they will agree that, yep, we've done a good job and it's ready to go. You've got the athletic director, you've got your director of buildings and grounds who's checking it.
The architect and engineer on the project,
Okay.
they'll look it over. And
Yeah.
And I guess that's I'm asking for, like, the expert in the room would be like the or the company that's doing it. They know, like, IHSA rules or something, like they know exactly what is safe and what is passable. Again, you said you put out put a bid out, and nobody said they would be willing to resurface it. They wanted to rebuild it. But this one company, have you used them before? We have
not.
What do you know about their background when it comes to knowing, like, again, have they done other tracks?
They're a
giving us a
track
safe
company.
product.
And the architect and engineer do a background check.
Yeah.
Reference.
But yeah, reference check. That's
Perfect.
what I'm looking for.
Okay.
Yeah. So they've spoken with other customers who have had work done, and they felt comfortable moving forward with the project.
Okay, thank you.
Any further discussion, anyone? So at this point, we just proceed with a vote on approving the capital improvements project as presented?
Unless
Or-
unless through the board conversation, there was a different recommendation in support of a different recommendation. Otherwise, it is just the recommendation that comes in the memo.
So I would be comfortable with pulling this one line item out and waiting till I have a conversation at our retreat. Because Mr. Payton, you said that would probably be okay if we just pull this one line item out.
Yeah, paving, either way you go, it's considered a paving project.
Okay, okay.
And that's something that's easier to get documents put together and get a bid out on the street. You can bid it later because you're not waiting on specific components. It's asphalt and rubber.
Now, real quick, just to piggyback off of what Dr. Layden said, is that something we can discuss at the retreat?
No, the retreats, again, board self-evaluation, communication, board goals, those types of things to monitor in and of itself. The actual, if this is polled for consideration for future discussion, it would be an open session discussion. It wouldn't be anything in closed session because it's not a closed session topic.
So I guess the reason I'm thinking this is I think if we have a conversation at the board retreat and we talk about big picture things, we talk about, processes, or I think we're thinking about revamping a lot of the stuff we've been doing, right? I think that then might help us make that decision at the next open session. I could be wrong.
Are you talking about the
At the end of
22,000?
July.
At the end of July, yeah.
Are you talking about the 600,000 or are you talking about the,
I think either of these.
because the
conversations-
22 is already done.
Well, no, I don't,
Yeah.
we made that decision already, right?
Right.
That board made that decision because of this conversation, right? We went through this back and forth, the 29,000 was kind of like the compromise to like, what can we do now? And what's the best we can do with what we have, right? That's how we got to this, right? I think we knew then it wasn't
I guess
fantastic.
what part of the, are you asking to pull? Because my question is,
I was just gonna pull that, the track itself. I think that's the only thing we should pull.
because yes, if we approve this now, we're approving for 2024, 2025. So then again, in the board retreat, when we talk about what are our priorities,
Yeah.
so then we would be, at some point when we do the 2025, 2026, if this is something that rises to a priority, then we could talk about that at that time for that budget. I'm just saying, I know a lot of people are concerned that it was pushed off to 2027, and then there's some, it's like, oh, we're not trying to push it farther down.
No, I don't want to. I feel like it's hard to say. It's hard to pull a vote tonight and say what we're going to do with this if we haven't talked about what we think our priorities are. Right? Do we think student athletics is a huge priority for us? Do we think that it's not? There's a lot of things we have to prioritize as a new board.
And you can come back and add that before that 2025 discussion. You don't need to wait. You can add that when you're ready.
All right, thank you.
So regardless of what we decide tonight, nothing's happening this year. It would all wait. The patches, but they've already been approved, right? There's no going back on that. It's already been done.
The discussion tonight is so that we can get going on the life safety work and these projects for next summer, because it takes that much time.
So whether we make this,
But this pavement, Mr. Payton is saying is okay to wait a couple months till you have discussion. But we do need to make a decision, because if you're not going to do the track, we need to do the bus lot and these other seal coating jobs.
so
Sorry, I just had a light bulb come on. So that's what you're talking about is the pavement. We're seeing pavement track. Okay.
So,
that's what we're-
yeah, for tonight, we want, I believe it's being proposed that we're gonna pull off the $500,000 for the bus lot resurfacing, repaving, patching, seal coating, right? And we're gonna pull that off of the vote for tonight altogether. And we would just simply vote yea or nay on the other items for the capital project list. I think one or three of them are life safety. So I mean they have to be done either way we slice it. And we would just vote on that chunk above the $500,000 on page 2. We'd vote yea or nay on that and move that forward so we can get the ball rolling for the paperwork and all the things that we need. We can come back at the end of July or in 2 sections, and then we can come back and vote yea or nay on the either
Pavement, track,
Whatever.
one, none, both.
Can I just add one thing then that would be for a future, I don't know, future discussion or where you put it, but then, I've asked for like the safety of the track, who can give us like a report on that, but what about the safety of this pavement too? Because we're not experts of pavements, and if if it's a safety for our bus drivers and for our buses, and I want to know that too. So I don't know what that looks like, but so we can have a discussion apples to apples in the sense of safety to safety, because again, like you said, we value students, we value our staff, so.
Is there any additional information we need to ask for to be found out for us in the meantime? help in a difficult discussion when we come back into open session at the end of July. Is there additional information that we can request at this time? Besides, we can't ask for a specific bid for the resurfacing of the track.
I just know that Board Member Simmons' request for the safety piece or the understanding of the certification, if there is that piece out there. I'm hearing that as one piece of it in addition to the actual projects themselves.
So then at this point, do we develop, I guess, do I entertain a motion to put the pavement portion of the capital improvements program at 500,000 to seal coat patch southwest bus lots on hold at this time? And we can't put the current track improvements on hold. That's already been done. So basically, we're just putting this on hold, correct? Yes. So I would entertain a motion to approve the capital improvements plan with the amendment that we put the paving of the bus parking lots on hold. Is that correct?
Yes, but can you use some of the language in the recommendation?
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's okay.
Oh, it's on
Then just change,
Yeah.
pull off that one and change the amount.
Okay. So at this point, I will entertain a recommendation that the board directs the administration to move forward with the planning, including seeking public bids as needed for capital projects identified above at the cost will change.
885.
At a cost of $885,000 for summer of 2024, excluding the payment for the parking lots,
Thank you.
for the bus parking lots,
And estimated cost.
and estimated cost.
Do we need to put a date in there of like when we will
So it's for some, oh,
no, I meant
Sorry.
that we will make a final determination by July meeting of, or
that's up to the board.
It doesn't necessarily have to be in the recommendation. If you tell us you want it at the end of July, that's when we'll put it on the agenda for end of July. Julie, did you get that updated recommendation?
Got it.
So moved.
Second. Roll call, please.
Mr. Gonzalez,
Aye.
Mr. McCauley,
Aye.
Dr. Lawler,
Aye.
Mr. Cook,
Aye.
Mrs. Simmons,
aye.
Mr. Kleisner,
Aye.
Mr. Mankowski.
Aye. Motion passes 7-0.
So is July the target then?
Yes.
Okay. And for the board, they put together a list of capital projects that the board has done in the last few years, just as an FYI kind of thing, so that you can see that.
Thank you,
way
Mr.
have
Payton.
the history, and you can see what kinds of projects and how much money we put into that.
Thank you, Mr. Payne.
Thank you, Mr. Payton.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, next order of business is now J2, approval of elementary and secondary school emergency relief ESSER 3 spending plan.
Yes,
Just before we
Yeah.
get going, I don't know, I want to let folks know you're not interested in the rest of the stuff. You don't have to stick around, right? Like we usually make this comment like. You know, you're done
Yeah,
with
you're
your
welcome to
topic.
stay.
You're welcome to stay. We
Yeah,
won't
you're
have
welcome.
any questions.
Love for you to stay.
Yeah, you don't have to. There it is. Class dismissed.
thank you. Our next, the item is, President Gonzalez just shared is moved to now J2, but it's the approval of the elementary, secondary, school emergency, plan. As you know, that those are the dollars that are COVID related, and the expenses are COVID related, and there's certain percentages and certain amounts. So with that, I'll turn it over to Dr. Fuchs, and you can walk us through the findings, some of the feedback, and that recommendation.
Thank you, I appreciate that. If you'll remember back in March, we started the process of trying to figure out what it is our stakeholders, how they want to use the ESSER dollars. These are one-time federal dollars that are a result of COVID, and we need to use them on things such as learning loss and COVID kinds of benefits. Remote learning is another one of them. So what we did is we got feedback from various stakeholder groups. I've listed the feedback that we received from each of the groups in the board memo. You've had a chance to look at that. Dr. Layton talked to high school students. We received 533 parent survey results. We went to the teacher leaders through the EAC and shared leadership team. We met with administrators and we met with the KEA leadership. Based on all of the feedback that we received, the cabinet put together the plan that you see on page 3 and 4. First of all, we have $1.2 million to spend by September of 24. 20% has to address learning loss. And we've got the various items in the plan along with the estimated dollars for those items. One of the questions during public comment was regarding how can you have something in two places. We are purchasing Chromebooks and licenses and the cases, which yes, those can be used for remote learning. That's a piece of the puzzle. And then we're also replacing iPads for the kindergarten and first grade. And that's the other large piece of technology where we've divided it up because it does both. It meets learning loss and it fits in the general category. So that's why you have different pieces of technology in different categories. Same thing with the networking equipment. You have projectors, you have back-end equipment, servers, things like that, where it's used in both places. We believe that based on the law and the required amounts of money, that we've met the spirit of the law. Once the board approves this plan, we have to post it on the website and we have to submit the grant to ISB. So even though you all might agree that yes, this plan is what we should and could be doing, ISB has the final authority to say yay or nay. So once we get this step done, we'll move forward. I'll submit this plan to ISB, the Illinois State Board of Education, and wait for their feedback and approval. I'll be sharing that information with you, whether it's yes, no, or something in between. Sometimes they'll just tweak a few things. Other times they'll say no. Other times they'll just say yes. It just simply depends. They have multiple grant readers that have to, and each reader looks for something different. So it goes through a pretty rigorous process. Does anybody have any questions on any of the items in the plan?
What was the survey that got sent out to the parents? Was it they could type anything they want, they could select out of the list? Like, what did that look like?
The grant itself has a list of 16 allowable expenditures. And so what we did is we gave the parents those 16 allowable expenditures and asked them to select their top 3.
Okay.
And then it gave us which of those expenditures were in the top 3, and that is what is listed. These are the 3 allowable expenditures that had the top 3 responses from the parent survey.
Okay. I was just wondering because I was like, what parent would write all the?
That's why, yeah. It was a part of what's allowable.
Okay.
It was one of the prompts. Good question. I get it now. What you were asking.
I can't find that document in front of me. But there's one in there for security, correct, for the Harvard Middle School for 80,000.
Yes.
Now is that, because this funding is just a one-time grant, is that just for a 1 year attest? And then he or she is gone after?
Not necessarily.
Okay.
What we thought we could, or we're hoping that they'll approve it. If they will, it'll buy us a year where we can plan on how to pay for it in the future.
Okay.
Because we know that once we get it, we're not gonna wanna give it up. But at least maybe we can use grant money the first time. With this federal money, you generally don't wanna use it for certified staff because we have to pay an extra 10% on the cost of that. But with a contracted service like that, you can just pay for the contract and you don't have to pay the extra. So that's one way in which you can use money, one-time monies for people. But we do know that once we get it, we're not gonna wanna give it up.
Okay. And is that what the cost is to have an SRO?
I talked with the sheriff and he said that that's a good estimate. He won't know until he gets somebody. After we make the official request, he finds a person, they tell me what their salary is. He said that's a safe estimate.
Okay. And again, so are we paying separate from what they're getting? Say if it's a King County Sheriff or something like that, are we paying their time while they're here? Or is there like
Yes, it's a contract.
two? Okay.
Yeah, and it's a lengthy contract and we pay for their time. So if it's the 178 days for the school year, we're paying for the 178 days, part of that portion. And then they typically were there a day or two before school, a day or two after school, and then they go back to whatever their post is on the street, so to speak.
What are the restrictions on how, I know that 20% has to be used to address the learning loss, but the other 80%, is that still have to replace like COVID related issues?
Yes, it does.
Okay.
It has to fall within the 16 allowable items.
And I'm
And
looking
I'm
at,
sorry, those allowable items were in a previous board memo,
okay.
and I didn't bring them all with. I'd be happy to send them to you, or you can look at previous board memos. We did this in March.
Okay.
March 13th, and it's got it in that board memo.
Okay.
Yeah,
Perfect.
it's a page and a half.
Yes. And then with the doors and windows, that is also on the capital plan. Will that address some of these issues, or has that already been accounted for? Because I see some of these, it's like door 6, $10,000. Does that, is that in areas?
Yeah, some of the doors and windows have been done. Some of them need to be done. The reason why doors and windows are allowable is because of air quality.
So I think what I'm gonna say is, so if we do get the HVAC and the replaced doors and windows, so that's 500,000. Will that come off of, is that like listed on capital projects for later on? Like, will that replace some of these things? Or is this more above and beyond what's already we have listed here?
Yeah, some of them are in there and some of them are above and beyond.
Okay. So if we do get approved on the ESSER funds, then
Yeah.
those things will drop from the.
And we'll be figuring that out,
Okay.
depending on if they approve it, because I've been told we can go back in time, which usually in grants you can't. So I gotta figure that out.
Yeah.
If they approve it.
Okay, thank you.
And I think Dr. Fuchs pointed this out too, but again, this is the last of the ESSER dollars and it's one-time expenditures. So typically you want to do one-time cost as opposed to recurring, and so the SRO, I believe, is the only recurring cost in there.
Yes.
Yep.
Any other questions, anybody? All right, so at this point, we will entertain a motion to approve the ESSER 3 spending plan as presented by the administration.
So moved.
Roll call, please.
Mr. Cook?
Aye.
Mr. McCauley?
Aye.
Dr. Lawler?
Aye.
Mr. Gonzalez?
Aye.
Mr. Mankowski?
Aye.
Mr. Kleisner?
Aye.
Mrs. Simmons?
Aye.
Motion passes 7-0. So now we'll move to J3, which is the approval of certified staff. See, 2 full-time FT special education teachers for KST. Dr. Layden.
Yes. As you will learn and know as former board members or new board members, that staffing comes through the Board of Education. So when there's additional staff, those come to the Board of Education at our regularly scheduled meetings. And so tonight, as part of this, Dr. Adkins is going to do a couple things. First of all, he's going to talk through those 2 FTE. And then just as a quick reminder, in March, that same board meeting that Dr. Fuchs referenced, March is typically our annual staffing plan. So I know that some of our board members may have been here in the audience, but we also have that on film or on video and archive. That might, if you weren't able to see it, that might be a good meeting to go back and watch the staffing plan portion, because that outlines the staffing plan for the year, for the following year. And then, so with that, so I just asked Dr. Adkins to give us a little bit of an update on the overview of how that is built, how sections are determined, how staffing is determined, just as an overview. So there is a recommendation that we need action on. Then there's the other part of this that Dr. Adkins will just share as an informational piece. Thank you, Dr. Adkins.
Thank you, Dr. And if I may, I'd probably want to do the overview first so that the conversation about the staffing with West makes a little bit more sense. Annually, we present a minimum staffing plan to the board, and it is just that. It's a minimum. It's not the maximum, because we get new students need new services, new courses need to be offered, sections need to be split. All those kinds of things occur during the spring and summer. And so we give you the baseline, knowing full well that we may need to change things or add things or revise things as we go along. It's important for the board to know, our new members, that anytime there's a defined need, we've always added. We don't not add when there are those needs. But then within that, there's parameters that we use to determine when staffing is needed. The request you're going to hear tonight is something that in prior board meetings we've described as a have to do. There's legal requirements under special education laws that put us in a position of having to do some of these things. But then there's also other things that are up for discussion, programmatically maybe, or preferentially, and we can always talk about those as well. We monitor enrollment on a weekly basis. I have to give a shout out to our support staff at each of our sites, especially at the elementary level where we typically see the most important fluctuations. They go in every Thursday, update the enrollment for me so that I can look at it then, and we track where we are at with growing class sizes or sections so that we can potentially add staff there if we have to. And I don't know that I can't recall a summer where we haven't added something somewhere because of increased student enrollments. It's important for the board to know that enrollment and registration and class registration don't happen cleanly. They don't happen in nice little pockets where if we suddenly add 4 kids to a school, that means a section at a grade level. It could be 4 kids at any one of the 6 different grade levels at an elementary. It could be 4 kids that all require special education services. At the high school level, it could be 5 or 6 kids that all register for a specific type of class that's already full. And then we have to go to second and third choices or split classes. And so there's all sorts of variables, and it's an ongoing, evolving target that we have to try to meet. So it's important for the board to know that we monitor that closely. We talk with our buildings on a regular basis, and when we have those needs, we bring them forward to you. So that brings us to tonight. Tonight, we'd want the board to know that at one of our sites at Stewart, we came to the board in March with approximately 36 students that needed special education services. We're at about 45 now. On a yearly basis at our elementaries, we typically see about 10 additional students. So we haven't begun the year yet, but we know that we'll have somewhere around 10 students receive services, become entitled for services during the course of the school year. And so we're coming tonight to ask for 2 special ed teachers for Stewart so that we can accommodate both the current need and the anticipated historical average increase need. It's also important for the board to know that separate from Kaneland, outside of anything to do with Kaneland, special education is probably in the most dire need at this time for filling positions. There are very limited candidate pools out there for all of our special education services, specifically related services. So to that end, we're making the recommendation to add 2 special ed teachers now while we have a higher degree of probability of filling those positions so that we can service both the existing students at Stewart and the anticipated additional students who we're monitoring, we're progress monitoring, but may very well come to receive services during the 23-24 school year. So that's a lot. We'll talk more about staffing as we go through the year and as we get closer to March in terms of the whole thing and how it works. But hopefully that's enough of an overview for tonight so that we could talk about and get approval for the 2 FTE for Stewart.
Any questions or discussion?
Yes.
So some of this is going to be driven by the potential caseload that we're looking at. And what do you anticipate at this time, not holding you, David? What's the anticipated caseload?
11 to 1. We shoot for 12 to 1 under our workload plan with a state cap at 15 to 1. Keep in mind that those ratios they don't speak at all to the type of need, severity of need, or significance of need of the students involved. And so, for example, a special ed teacher might have 10 students with high needs, which feels like a 20 to 1 ratio. And you might have another teacher with 12 students who are maybe less intensive need in terms of their needs, that's a very appropriate ratio. So it's not as clean as saying just the numerical ratios.
Right. Do we tier the intensity at all?
Do we tier the intensity?
For example, A, B, C, D level?
No.
Based upon?
We have our continuum of services, and when the
Minutes of
needs
service.
exceed what we can do at the building level, we talk about alternative placements, but that's typical.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, a question about that, because we've had some parent concerns about some behavioral issues, and so when you are moving the classrooms around and figuring out every year, you evaluate the whole class, and not in special, obviously, certain students with, needs and stuff like that. But if there's other behavioral issues, how do you handle that stuff or that process?
Yeah. So allotting staff, as I just mentioned, isn't a straight mathematical equation. If it were, it'd be a lot easier. It's not. We do look at those needs of individual students, groups of students, cohorts of students. A challenge can be, though, perceived needs versus actual needs versus defined needs versus needs being met through a variety of our different support systems. We have an MTSS program that's very robust. We have a special education program that's very robust. We have excellent teachers. And so how kids respond to those interventions and whether they are making progress or growth, those are all variables that go a little bit into the science of education, but also into the art of education and are challenging. They are looked at. All the different stakeholders in our staffing process have a voice in how that works. Our staff helps us with class configuration, for example, class makeup, which kids might be better with one another, all the way up to the numbers of students at the higher levels, how many kids are in band in one section of a certain class, challenge classes, AP, honors, all those kinds of things play a factor in how we go about looking at class sizes.
And I know you've talked about this, like you said, in the staffing plan earlier in March. There are ratios that you kind of adhere to with classrooms. So it's not like, you're bringing 4 classes down to 3 like this following year.
Yeah, there's
certain
recommended
ratio.
class sizes that we have. We use what we call a +2 model. So for example, kindergarten through 2nd grade, the recommended class size is 22. It's not a cap. It's not a hard and fast. It's a recommendation. And so we're looking at a range of 20 to 24 for those K2 classes. The challenge becomes when a teacher gets 24 and then they get another one and now they're at 25. And so the question then of course becomes, aren't we going to get another section? Well, yes, maybe, but not right away, because to go from 25s with, for example, 3 sections, you're at 75 kids. Divide 75 by 4. We're not quite there yet.
Right.
We're a little too low. So it's not actually as simple as I get one more student, thus we should have another section, which I believe historically has been the cycle of the feedback that I receive, whether it be from the community or from the staff. Oh my gosh, here's a grade level that has 3 classes at 25 and 1 at 26, or 3 at 26 and 1 at 27. We need another teacher. We might need to do that, but maybe not yet. And so we need to not only watch what comes in, but then also reciprocally, we also have students leave every year. We have students that come in and then move out, and then add on top of that the intensity of some of those needs that you have. For example, we could hypothetically have a class section where we're right at the 26s. Okay, so the recommended class size for 3-5 is 24. So +2, the range is 22 to 26. We're at 26, and there may be some concerns because of the students in those classes. But what the rest of the system may not know is that hypothetically 1 or 2 of those kids might have reached that continuum of service where they're being outplaced now, where they're receiving additional layers of service, where there'll be additional supplemental support staff in there. Maybe not a classroom section, but maybe a special ed teacher, maybe a paraprofessional. So there's a variety of different supports that can be layered in to alleviate those kinds of concerns. We have a defined process too with the KEA where when teachers are concerned, they may very well be ones to know it best, right? They can petition the administration to do some of that problem solving, to talk about the various kinds of supports we can put in place as well. So there's a variety of mechanisms that come into play to safeguard any potential concerns that may be out there.
You made the comment, so, and I know it pretty much answered it, so sometimes we might go like 4 classes down to 3, but that's because we have kids leaving. Has Ignite been an impact? Is there certain, like, is there one school more kids are going to Ignite than others, or?
Right. There were enough students from one grade at one building that altered the staffing pattern for that grade at that building, but otherwise it's been spread out equally amongst all of the grades.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Additional questions, comments? No? All right, well, at this time, I'll entertain a motion that the Board of Education approve an additional 2.0 FTE for special education at Kaneland John Stewart Elementary School.
So moved.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Mr. McCauley.
Aye.
Dr. Lawler.
Aye.
Mr. Gonzalez.
Aye.
Mr. Mankowski.
Aye.
Mr. Kleisner.
Aye.
Mrs. Simmons.
Aye.
Mr. Cook.
Aye.
Motion carries 7-0. All right. Well, at this point, we'll move on to the 4th item of new business, which is the approval of handbooks for support staff, first reading. And Dr. Fuchs, would you please provide more information?
Absolutely. So annually, we ask the board to approve 3 handbooks. These are 3 handbooks that are covering our employees, specifically the bus drivers, the food service, and the educational support staff that do not belong to the association named Speak. The bus drivers, obviously we know who those are. Food service, we actually have some that are in Speak and some that are not. This handbook covers the 2 employees, well, actually next year it'll be 3 employees that are not in Speak because they're mid-level management. They're not the director, but they're the head cooks. And then the educational support staff covers people that are support staff in the district office, the technology office, the maintenance department, and the 2 bus mechanics fall under the support staff handbook. On a year when we bargain with Speak, oftentimes the handbook changes will reflect the contract changes with Speak. This is a non-bargaining year, and so my changes that I'm recommending are minimal for this year. On the first page, I go through what the changes are. I tell you for each handbook, and then I give you a copy of the handbook. Any new changes are in bold so that you can go to that page and that section and see them. So what I'll do is I'll briefly go over the changes, and then if the board has any questions, please be sure to let me know. In the bus driver handbook, there are 3 changes. We pay a trainer the hourly rate. The minimum hourly rate is going up, and so we've increased it. We have already a perfect attendance incentive Our change is to clarify that they only get the increase each quarter if their perfect attendance is consecutive. Otherwise, if they, say for example, they get perfect attendance first quarter, but not second, when they come back to third, they start, if they get perfect attendance, they start back at 100. They only go up if their attendance is consecutively perfect. And lastly, in all 3 handbooks, I've updated the harassment policy that was readopted on December 12th of 2022. For the food service, there were no substantive changes. We have to add the state required review date. Our director of food service, Gigi Statler, has reviewed the information and we've updated the dates. And then you have the harassment policy. For the support staff handbook, we updated the information on page 7B regarding the payroll deductions and when they can and cannot have their pay distributed over 20 versus 24 pay periods. We added some specifics to make it more clear. Page 14, we added another sample chart. We currently have one in there for 6.5 hours, 7.5, and 8. This year, our food service people went from 6.5 to 7 hours. So we've added the 7-hour chart to help so that they know how they can report absences. And lastly, we updated the harassment policy. Those are all the changes that I'm recommending for this year in these handbooks.
Alrighty. Any discussion, any questions, guys?
I was gonna ask, for the perfect attendance incentive, does that restart every calendar year, or could you get up to like 1,000? So.
It restarts every calendar
Okay.
year. Thanks for asking. We should probably clarify that. You know what though, the handbook is only good for 1 year,
Yeah.
so we're okay.
And again, this is on first reading tonight. This will come back for final approval on the consent at the next meeting.
Thank you.
Alrighty. Well,
We
I
need
guess,
to approve it on first reading. There's a recommendation.
yeah. At this point, I will entertain a motion that the Board of Education approves the recommended changes to the bus driver, food service, and educational support staff handbook as presented on first reading.
So moved.
Second. Roll call, please.
Dr. Lawler.
Aye.
Mr. Gonzalez.
Aye.
Mr. Mankowski.
Aye.
Mr. Kleisner.
Aye.
Mrs. Simmons.
Aye.
Mr. Cook.
Aye.
Mr. McCullough.
Aye.
Motion passes 7-0.
Thank you.
Okay, well, that concludes new business for tonight. At this point, we're gonna be moving on to the board we'll be move on to the superintendent reports. And Dr. Layden.
Yes.
Sure.
A couple things. One of the topics that I can't remember if it was, I think it was either April, the second meeting in April, or the previous meeting. There was a topic, safety, that a board member brought up. So we will be bringing that back to the board at the June board meeting. So we'll have the SRO as a part of that piece, as long as we have the information by then, and then other best practices and safety protocols that we've implemented and instituted and plan on doing moving forward. So that is one of the topics for future agenda that will get met. The June meeting, then also at the June meeting, we have 2 other updates that Ed Services will help share, which is an academic update from the end of the year as it relates to our SIP goals and academics for our students. And then also our strategic plan, a Kaneland Connects update of where we are and the goals that we met this year. Other piece of good news, as you know, annually we look to expand our district committees. Last year, I think we had only 2 or 3 applications to expand out our committees. This year we had 13. So Dr. Fuchs and I are almost going through like trading cards. We're looking at everybody going, this one will be FAC, this could be CAC. And so then we're going to contact families or contact each of the individuals. some people put down 3, but said only where you need me most. Some said I'm willing to do 2. So we're going to contact those families in the next coming weeks, and then that way we'll have those committees upgraded for next year, and also have just more people on the committees, which would be great for more or for additional community feedback. Also, June 5th, so next week, the joint annual conference, which as Mr. or Dr. Lawler talked a little bit about PD, talked about board roles, talked about vision, mission, those kinds of things from a board member standpoint. The joint annual conference in November, that information again will be available Monday for those that want to sign up. That is the best professional development that board members can do. If you're available, there's conferences on both Friday and Saturday. Some people stay overnight in the city, some commute in and out, some only come when they're available. But as those are open, I'm happy to talk through that with all of our board members to see what you might be available and what might be workshops that they offer. They have a nice variety from the business office side, from the board, school side, from the board side, and then also from the superintendent administrator side. So there's a lot of activities and workshops to attend. And those were the 4 that I had. Dr. Fuchs, I know you had at least one before we go on to our board members.
Thank you, I do. In case if you have not seen, Kaneland is hosting the King County Sheriff's funeral service tomorrow at 11 a.m. here at Harder Middle School in the gym for Hudson, the K-9 officer that was protecting his handler. And so we're very proud to partner with the Sheriff's Department and to host that service. It will last a couple hours, and my thanks to Chris Weiss, who's our middle school assistant principal. She's running point on it tomorrow with support from Tim Wolf for the projector and the technology, support from maintenance with regard to air conditioning, support from custodians to set up the chairs, and support from Gigi, who's director of food service, who's picking up waters because it's supposed to be pretty warm tomorrow. But please note, we will have lots and lots of cars, and the sheriff's office is providing the parking detail, and they have stated due to the number of cars, they won't be in each space. They're gonna park them tight to get as many cars parked as possible. The service is at 11, so.
Big thank you for that, everyone. Any board members have anything? I just want to piggyback on Dr. Layden with the joint annual conference, especially for the new board members. It's really a great opportunity to get in there and learn, understand our role, and also how the district works in general. So I've attended the past 2 years. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me, but it's definitely a really good opportunity to grow and learn as a board member. So that's that. So then we move on to topics for future agendas. Are there any topics for future agendas we would like to discuss at this time?
And I will note that I have the July topic for the one that we discussed tonight, so that one's already included, so you don't have to bring that one up if you don't want to.
Right. Is there anyone signed up for public comment too? No. Is there anyone who would like to speak this time? All right. Well, at this point, the board is scheduled to go in, is scheduled for a closed session where we will anticipate action to be taken following the closed session. Once the closed session is concluded, the recording will include the action taken by the Board of Education planned for this evening. At this point, I will entertain a motion to go into closed session to discuss 122C1 at 8:49 p.m.
So moved.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Mr. Gonzalez.
Aye.
Mr. Mankiewicz.
Aye.
Mr. Kleisner.
Aye.
Mr. Simmons.
Aye.
Mr. Cook.
Aye.
Mr. McCauley.
Aye.
Dr. Lawler.
Aye.
Passes 7-0. 9:11, and we are back in open session, open live session. And at this point, I will entertain a motion to dismiss Miss Melissa Lacy due to her insubordination, absence without authorization, job abandonment, and violations of Board Policy 5.185, Family and Medical Leave Board, Family and Medical Leave, and Board Policy 5.120-AP2, Administrative Procedure, Employee Conduct Standards.
So moved.
Second.
All right, roll call?
Absolutely. Here, it's here. Mr. Gonzalez,
Aye.
Mr. McCauley,
Aye.
Dr. Lawler,
Aye.
Mr. Cook,
Aye.
Mrs. Simmons,
Aye.
Mr. Kleisner,
Aye.
Mr. Mankowski.
Aye.
Motion passes 7-0. Okay, at this time I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed?